Live from Citizen TV, this is Friday Night with Lillian Mooney.
Hello there and a very good evening to you. The skies have favored us this Friday night, at least here in Nairobi. Not a wet Friday this evening, and that is indeed good news, especially after last week's mess. We're glad to be with you once again right here on Citizen TV. Let's take a look at stories making headlines tonight.
The money that was appropriated to us was 150 million. We are now asking for another 100.
Dashing for more. The Deputy President's office asks Parliament to give an additional 1.8 billion shillings to meet expenses. Pack of advisors. The Court of Appeal suspends a High Court ruling that had declared presidential advisors unconstitutional.
Ametafutwa Mama Rusi Kenyatta na tumemtafuta mpaka polisi na hakuna mahali tuko na information yoyote.
Tragedy deepens. Floods, death toll rises to 62 as desperate families continue searching for missing relatives.
Today, the Commission will issue a call for those who never reported to contact our various offices in the country.
Filing for compensation. KNCHR says protest victims who did not file complaints have until the first week of April to do so. Good evening. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Yula Nzale. Friday night starts now, and the Office of the Deputy President is seeking a supplementary budget of 1.8 billion shillings to support its operations, staff, salaries, travel, and official events. The proposals came under scrutiny before the National Assembly Committee on Administration and Internal Security, where lawmakers questioned increased allocations for air travel and hospitality. At the same time, the office dismissed claims that 44 million shillings was spent on the office of the spouse of the Deputy President. Melita Olatengas reports.
The Office of the Deputy President is seeking an additional supplementary budget of 1.8 billion shillings. That is an addition to the 3 billion allocated in the last financial year to cover operations, staff salaries and compensation, travel and official events. Members of the Administration and Internal Security Committee questioned the supplementary budget request from the Deputy President's office, particularly an additional 100 million shillings for air travel, 350 million shillings for hospitality and events, and 200 million for local travel.
What specific activities justify this significant increase in hospitality spending, over 100%?
Who are these new employees? What is their number in terms of the new employees, and what are they being paid? That is the kind of information we need.
The money that was appropriated to us was 150 million. We are now asking for another 100, and that's all about the expenditure on hire of choppers.
The Office of the Deputy President says the supplementary budget request has been necessitated by the need to first settle pending bills, which consumed a large portion of the initial allocation.
We crossed the financial year with that, which we reported even to this committee, with 472 million spending bills, which formed again the first charge on our budget.
The supplementary proposals come against the backdrop of a report by the Controller of Budget indicating that 44 million shillings had been spent on the office of the spouse of the Deputy President, which sparked public outrage among Kenyans over ridiculous spending at Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki's office. The Principal Secretary in the Office of the Deputy President, Moses Mbaruku, dismissed the claims, saying the amount was erroneously included in the report by Office of the Controller of Budget, Margaret Nyakango.
When they were doing their things, the explanation they didn't hurt us. We wrote them, and they actually apologized to the office by way of letter, indicating they did that erroneously.
The supplementary proposals are subject to approval by Parliament. Melita Olatengas, Citizen TV.
The Court of Appeal has temporarily halted the implementation of a High Court ruling that had declared the creation of several advisory positions in the office of the President unconstitutional. The stay reinstates the President's full list of advisors, giving the head of state's advisory team a lifeline amid reports from the Controller of Budget showing that State House spent half of its annual budget within the first 6 months of the current financial year. As Ayub Abdikadir reports, Katiba Institute, which filed the petition, says the ruling comes as a shock, noting it was scheduled to be delivered in a month and that they received no prior notice.
Justices Weldon Korir, Helen Ongunde and Samson Okongo in their ruling granted an order staying the execution of the judgment by the High Court, which ruled that the conglomerate of President William Ruto's advisors was unconstitutional. The appellate court ruling that by the time of the impugned judgment, the coterie of advisors was already rendering services to the public and bore all the likelihood of disrupting functions of the office of the President. Similar argument made by the Attorney General, who argued failure in the suspension of the High Court judgment will result in operational paralysis within the office of the President. In responding to submissions by Katiba Institute, which expressed fears of duplication of roles, the three judges ruled that the Attorney General satisfied the court for the order sought, staying the execution of the High Court judgment pending the hearing and determination of the appeal. Appreciating great public interest as a consequence of the weight of the matter, the judges recommended to the President of the court the intended appeal to be heard on priority basis. In response on their X account, Katiba Institute expressed dismay at the timing of the decision, saying that they learned the ruling by the appellate court on social media, having received no formal notification. This grants President William Ruto, who backpedaled on his 2024 pledge to have advisors, instead constituting an advisory team equivalent in number to his cabinet, a sigh of relief. President Ruto's advisors earn an estimated 1 million Kenya shillings in gross monthly salary, putting them on par with cabinet secretaries and well above the pay of most public servants. The team, which numbers around 20, costs taxpayers more than 1 billion Kenya shillings annually. And to an already overburdened taxpayer, the plethora of advisors will add more strain on public coffers, the quality of the President's advisors and output questioned. Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV.
An update on the flood situation in the country now, and the death toll from last Friday's floods now stands at 62, with Nairobi recording the highest number of fatalities at 33. The Ministry of Interior says the capital is followed by the Eastern region with 17 deaths and the Rift Valley with 7. At least 9 families are still searching for loved ones reportedly swept away by the raging waters that left a trail of destruction. Gatete Njoroge reports.
Exactly a week after the capital city was submerged by flood waters, following a torrential downpour that left 33 people dead and destroyed properties worth billions of shillings while exposing the drainage system's failures, attention has turned to Nairobi Funeral Home, where the deceased are being preserved. For days, the morgue has been visited by hundreds of families, some seeking closure, others searching for loved ones who went missing during the storm. Among them, the family of Alex Njuki, who disappeared on Friday night along Mombasa Road, has been at the morgue for 3 days. What began as a mission to help a friend rescue his wife and child, stranded by floods in South Sea, has turned into an ongoing search with no end in sight.
Wakakuta jam. Alex akasema akatoka kwa gari, akasema anaenda kujisaidia. Kama wakaona dakika 5 imeisha na ajarudi. Ndugu yake akatoka kwa gari, akaenda kumtafuta, wakuona Alex mpaka wa leo.
The family fears he may have been swept away by the raging waters, as there was a drainage channel near the spot where he went to relieve himself. Efforts to trace him have so far been futile, despite checking morgues, hospitals and police stations.
Yani ametafutwa Mama Rusi, Kenyatta, na tumemtafuta mpaka polisi, na hakuna mahali tuko na information yoyote.
For Dan Otieno, the disappearance of his 19-year-old son Mike Ndiege is taking a toll on him. Mike was swept away on Saturday afternoon in Mihango, minutes after rescuing a friend who had slipped into a swollen river in the area.
Alijaribu kugeuka ndio sasa aruke hiyo mawe ya bridge. Mike akaanguka, akashika mawe, lakini akaita huyu mwenzake huyo Roni amsaidia mtoe. Roni kupeleka mkono akashika kidogo na mkono ikaponyoka, Mike akaingia kwa maji.
With the help of neighbors, Otieno embarked on a search mission that has seen him visit Ruai, Thika and Tala, but with little success. The two are among 9 people who are yet to be traced countrywide, following the intense rainfall that continues to pound the country. In Narok West, more than 10 families have been displaced after a heavy downpour on Thursday. The storm, which destroyed houses and other structures, also hampered the recovery efforts of 3 people who were swept away by floods 2 weeks ago. The death toll from the floods has risen to 62, including 46 men, 8 women and 8 children. Nairobi has recorded the highest number of fatalities at 33, followed by the Eastern region with 17 and the Rift Valley with 7. The Ministry of Interior reports 2 deaths each in the Nyanza and Coast regions, while Central recorded 1 fatality. Gatete Njoroge, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Away from the floods, families of victims and survivors of the 2024 protests, as well as those whose rights were violated during the 2017 presidential elections unrest, have been asked by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights to submit additional evidence within 21 days to be listed among those eligible for compensation before June. The Commission said the compensation fund, currently set at 2 billion shillings, could increase, warning that anyone attempting to falsify claims against the government will face legal action. Willie Lusige with that report.
A few days after President William Ruto ordered that victims and survivors of the 2024 anti-government protests, as well as those affected by the 2017 election unrest, be compensated before June,
the compensation process was stopped.
The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, KNCHR, has officially begun collecting information from victims and survivors. The Commission has also started compiling a list of those eligible for compensation, giving a 21-day window from Friday until April 3rd for victims or families of the deceased to submit evidence that their rights were violated.
So what we are hoping to do is to finish this first phase of collecting information by the first week of April. So that's in about 3 weeks, to allow those who had not reported anywhere to come to us.
This evidence includes OB reports, medical documents, and post-mortem reports for the deceased.
There'll be a flyer with all the information on where to report. It will also include a toll-free number for those who would want to call.
The Commission said it took this step because many Kenyans affected did not report incidents out of fear of police victimization.
There's quite a big number of people who say they never reported. We are yet to verify that. And they were afraid of reprisals from the police and backlash from the police.
KNCHR also warned that strict action will be taken against anyone attempting to submit false information to receive compensation.
So we've also put in place mechanisms to ensure that we weed out those claims that are false, including we will also push for prosecution.
Although the government's focus is on victims of the 2024 and 2017 events, the process may also cover victims of earlier protests, which could push the compensation fund beyond the Kenyan shillings 2 billion.
We may try to stretch it a bit, maybe to 2013, but for now, really the focus is on the 3 years. So that we see what we can report.
KNCHR said it will work with families of the victims, human rights organizations, and the courts to determine compensation amount based on the harm, including deaths, injuries, and medical costs.
But also to look at how courts have historically awarded similar injuries. for death, for injuries, and this is what will guide our recommendations.
Victims will also receive medical and psychological support, recognition, and formal apologies, while institutional reforms will be recommended to prevent future human rights violations. KNCHR said payment guidelines along the list of the beneficiaries will be announced in early April. Willie Lusige, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, learners at the AIC School for the Hearing Impaired have begun receiving psychosocial support following Thursday's tragedy that left one student dead and several others injured. Survivors of the fall are currently recuperating at Kapsabet Hospital, while the family of the deceased learner is making funeral arrangements. Brenda Wanga brings us the latest update.
At the AIC Senior School for the Hearing Impaired in Kapsabet, learners, teachers and community members gather in groups, perhaps trying to draw strength from each other. They are still reeling from a tragedy that has left them shaken. What began as excitement during the president's visit to a neighboring school quickly turned tragic, leaving one learner, Alan Kipkoech, dead.
So yesterday they were in the hall there, and they stood on the septic. Yeah. And then it broke down. And it broke down, and then when it broke down, there was one who fell inside the septic hole, and others were being helped, and they brought us faster to the hospital, and I feel so much grateful for that.
These are the ones who were fortunate to escape with injuries. For Alan's family, however, the outcome was far more devastating. At his home in Kiptega village in Nandi Hills, relatives, friends and neighbors have gathered to support a family grappling with the sudden loss of their son. Alan, a grade 8 learner, is remembered as a bright, cheerful and athletic boy who had great ambitions despite his disability.
Wakati alirudi alikuwa ananiambia nimuombe tajiri mwenye anamchungia nyumba mahali penye amepanda kawa. Akaniambia nitanunua maharagwe alafu tupande, alafu atalipia school fees. Kaniambia akirudi tutakuja tupande na yeye maharagwe kwa hiyo shamba. Lakini kwa bahati mbaya hakurudi kutoka shuleni.
As the family mourns the sudden and tragic death of their son, the Kenya Institute of Special Education, on a visit to the school, emphasized the need for enhancing safety of learners in schools, where the county government of Nandi reiterated its promise to work with the school and the families of those directly impacted by the Thursday incident.
To make sure that every learner in this country is safe and also included. And that's why we want to appreciate the head of state for the recent asserted bill, disability bill.
Whatever cost that will be incurred, the school or the parents will not have to deal with that. The county government of Nandi will be able to cover the cost of the treatment.
Out of 10 victims who were admitted to Kapsabet County Referral Hospital, 8 have since been discharged, while 2 remain hospitalized and are reported to be recovering well. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
President William Ruto has signed 3 bills into law. The president signed the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Amendment Act 2026, the Coffee Act 2023, a mediated version, and the Metrology Act 2023. The Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Amendment Act 2026 expands the scope of the Railway Development Levy to support funding of railway expansion beyond the construction and operation of the standard gauge railway. The Coffee Act 2023 provides for development and regulation of the coffee industry in Kenya. It transfers the regulatory and commercial roles currently undertaken by the Agriculture and Food Authority to the Coffee Board of Kenya. In the new law, the Coffee Board is mandated to regulate and promote the development of the coffee industry. The Metrology Act 2023 establishes a legislative framework to regulate met services in Kenya and to coordinate and monitor their delivery.
Navigated through the House by
Right, and former Cabinet Secretary Raphael Tuju has officially written to the Chief Justice complaining about the conduct of some judicial officers and their integrity. Tuju questions the process the court used to give leeway for the auction of his property in Karen to proceed. As part of his lamentations, the former Jubilee Party Secretary General also wants the DCI to arrest those who sponsored the goons who invaded his property on Saturday to forcefully evict him.
I feel very strongly that we must not allow a situation in which our judiciary system fails, because that's the last thing that we have, to have a situation of law and order. Is the last bastion. When everything else fails, you can fail in the political arena in parliament, you can fail in the executive, but once the judiciary structure, there are such serious cracks so that people are not able to get justice. And then they get enforcement done by goons. Then there's no country. Very soon we'll end up in chaos. So that I get my goons, you get your goons, and let's square it out. If the DCI should concentrate on the reports of big people that have made, arresting so-called goons is going for the small fry and leaving the big fish. Even those who came with the goons to my place on Monday, they know who they are. And if they don't, I can give them the names. And they should be charged. Don't tell me that you're charging goons and leaving the big people.
County health officials have today rolled out the HIV preventive injectable lenacapavir in a bid to arrest the rising numbers of HIV infections in the country. 15 counties were prioritized in the rollout of the new preventive method. Lenacapavir is given to individuals who have not had potential exposure in the past 72 hours. And Laura Otieno now reports on the efforts by the country to cut down infections to zero by the year 2030.
At the Chuda Sub-County Hospital in Mombasa, scores of residents turned up, keenly following the speeches during the launch of the HIV prevention jab lenacapavir. Tens of residents had turned up, most sharing the testimonials of pill fatigue from current usage of the oral PrEP pill, which is taken daily.
Saa zingine naweza sahau, lakini sasa hivi vile nina injection, najua ndaka miezi yangu misita ndio nirudi ni fati tena.
It's the pill burden and the accessibility because the client lives far away from the facility. So here we are. This is an option that is injectable PrEP that protects you for 6 months.
Kisii and Homa Bay counties also rolled out the injection after a sensitization drive with residents in the respective counties. Homa Bay, which has been recording high numbers of infections, rolled out the preventive jab, which will be available across all facilities in the country.
Our young people, the future generation of our county, are the ones getting the highest amount of new infections. And therefore, with this prophylaxis, we are now hopeful that we will begin to see the zero mark.
Health professionals have, however, called for concerted efforts, including the continued use of other HIV preventive measures.
Infections that could be acquired that are not protected by lenacapavir, and therefore the other preventive measures, the barrier methods, and other PrEP measures need to continue.
Studies show that when administered correctly, lenacapavir is up to 96% effective in preventing HIV. It is issued to HIV-negative persons who have not had potential exposure to HIV over the previous 72 hours. Laura Otieno, Citizen TV.
Right, a milestone there in the country. And we're going to be taking a very short break, but we'll be back shortly. Let's take a look at what's coming up. Coming up, a new study exposes how unpaid school fees are driving children out of classrooms and into absenteeism.
To soothe irritated and dry skin, Vaseline's healing power is able to penetrate beneath the surface of the skin. This is because Vaseline is made with unique blends of waxes and oils that melt into the spaces between skin cells. This promotes natural moisture regulation to deliver effective skin protection against dryness. Use Vaseline because it is the first step to maintaining natural, healthy-looking skin.
Kote nchini mbele tuendelee, mbele Kenya twende mbele,
Kenya twende mbele. NCBA, go for it.
Kia Mount Kenya. Raha Premium Kavagara na Raha Premium Gano ndio kibuku yao. Emelok nenana nelelek yala talale. Anela takage kana kerenja sietu. Na ukatikana kila vanti ya Kenya. Igun agenge en member Kavagara Club.
Mimi kama MC natenda ninayoyasema. Nimekuwa kielelezo kwa mara nyingi. Ni sawa, hakuna shida. Asante kwa Ariel Liquid mpya, ni nzuri.
New Ariel Liquid kwa mashine za kufulia huondoa madoa sugu kwa mosho moja.
Some kids are just a step ahead. The winning difference? A spoonful of Blue Band. The only one with the right levels of omega-3 and 6. Blue Band. A spoonful of difference.
Keep business growing with calling, texting, and SMS. Stay connected with customers and suppliers with Zidisha Plus voice and data. Join Safaricom Business today and power your progress.
Take advantage of our own collection offer and get additional discounts when you pick up your order from Royal Mabati Factory Limited, corrugated and box profile at 353 shillings per meter, brick tile and Roman tile at 370 shillings per meter. Free delivery is still available, but own collection means bigger savings and you get your Mabati within 2 hours. Call us now on 0722 638383.
Buroti maguta keja kwa mtaa mambo fiti, nafungua bahasha wao nikismile, mambo ni murwa kop imesoti eketa biza maplot nikasitu kaniflota mboka reti koto nikasitu.
Na payslip yako unaweza pata mobile loan ya 500,000 na personal loan ya 9 million. Tembelea Cooperative Bank branch leo. Cooperative Bank, we are you.
Thanks for staying with us. 6 accused persons charged in a robbery with violence case linked to the 2015 killing of former MP George Muchai have been convicted after the court found that the prosecution had proved its case against them. The court found that the prosecution had successfully linked them to a series of violent robberies, including the fatal attack. Trial Magistrate Lucas Onyina said witness testimonies and other evidence consistently identified the attackers as 4 armed men, with one of the accused seen carrying a large firearm during the robberies. While several suspects were convicted on various counts connected to the crimes, the 7th accused was acquitted after the court found insufficient evidence placing him at the scene. The sentencing for those convicted will be scheduled at a later date.
She knew Karanja's full names when people who had parked vehicles beside the road next to his home. I made the following findings. under section 215 of the Criminal Procedure Code, A, the first, second, third, and fourth accused persons are each guilty of each of counts numbers 1, 2, and 3 herein before first mentioned, and each of the said first, second, third, and fourth accused persons is each convicted of each of the said first, second, and third counts.
Poverty continues to widen the education gap in the country, with a new baseline study linking rising absenteeism and school dropouts to families' inability to pay school fees. A report by the Chalan Foundation conducted across 10 counties also highlights a growing digital divide, with the majority of learners reporting they have never used a computer. And as Emily Chebet reports, the study carried out in 51 public schools also reveals strained learning environments where more than 60 learners share a classroom, far above the recommended 40 per class.
Education is often described as an equalizer, but the economic divide continues to threaten the academic success of learners from disadvantaged backgrounds, with many forced to miss school or drop out of school altogether due to lack of school fees. Latest report by Chalan Foundation shows that 58% of absenteeism in 51 public schools in 10 counties is linked to lack of school fees. The study also identified disparities in learning environments across the counties, where 60 learners are sharing one classroom against the Ministry of Education's recommendation of 40 learners per classroom. From the report, 86% of the schools visited reported to have science laboratories, but 80% of those laboratories are poorly equipped. Additionally, 45% have computer labs, but half of them are non-functional.
More than half, that is 70%, that they say they've never used a computer, which is very, very high, looking at the target counties that we went to. And of course, we had around 30% that say they have ever used it, those who've done it regularly or occasionally, or maybe a few times.
These stakeholders are now calling on the government to bridge the gap in order to allow all learners access to quality education.
What will it take to close the digital divide affecting 1/3 of our learners? The children reflected in this report are resilient, capable, and full of promise. Our responsibility is to ensure that the systems around them work. This baseline is not the end of a study. It is the beginning of a shared journey to transform evidence into opportunity.
Right now, the government is giving food to schools in ASAL counties, because if you don't give them food in school, they have no food at home. So in order to encourage children to come to school, they are given lunch.
The study was conducted in Turkana, Bungoma, Homa Bay, Kitui, Samburu, Kajiado, Baringo, Bomet, Nandi, and West Pokot counties. Emily Chebet, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The body of the late retired Lieutenant Colonel George Were was flown to his home in Nyakach for family and friends to pay their last respects ahead of Saturday's burial. A requiem mass was held at the St. Joseph Nyabondo Catholic Church, where mourners were accorded a chance to condole with the family. The presiding priest called on all people to emulate the late colonel, whom he eulogized as a peacemaker who also offered guidance to the younger generation. Were died in a helicopter crash in Chepkieb Forest in Nandi alongside 5 others, including Member of Parliament Joanna Ngeno. He will be interred at his home in Kadianga Village, Kisumu County.
Their legacy continues. It will live on the people who knew and loved him. His story will continue to shape others, to shape his children, to shape the people who encountered him.
Aga Khan University Hospital, Nairobi has launched an 800 million shilling TrueBeam radiotherapy system. The machine, which is AI-enabled, is designed to transform cancer care in the region, and the machine is capable of real-time imaging, targeting tumors with extreme precision while sparing healthy tissue, reducing treatment sessions and side effects for various cancers. With Kenya recording 42,000 new cancer cases annually, this investment will allow patients to access world-class treatment locally, eliminating the massive financial burden of seeking healthcare abroad.
The new radiotherapy platforms will allow us to participate in international clinical trials, generate African-specific survival outcomes data, strengthen evidence-based cancer care on the continent.
So not only is it precise, but it's quicker for patients. And that means shorter time on the treatment couch. It means less side effects.
The TrueBeam system represents one of the most advanced radiotherapy platform in the world, integrating real-time imaging, precision radiation delivery, and AI-enabled treatment, as my sister explained, planning to target tumors with exceptional accuracy while protecting surrounding healthy tissues.
That story from Aga Khan brings us to yet another break. We'll be back with more. SBM Bank returns to profitability, reversing 1.2 billion shillings loss.
In another narration of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he stated, "Have the sahur meal, even if it is only a piece of date." These noble hadiths further indicate the importance of this meal for all those who are fasting. The blessing of the sahur meal strengthens worshippers and allows them to proceed with their days, worshipping Allah, working hard, and performing good deeds. Those who are hungry and fatigued may stray away from acts of worship and hard work throughout their days. The meal is to reinforce the fortitude of worshippers, to fast and perform all the necessary tasks that may surface during their day.
Angamiza nyasi na magugu haraka na Thrasher 630 SE, dawa ya magugu ya mahindi inayoweza kutumika wakati wowote wa ukuaji wa magugu makubwa au madogo. Thrasher 630 SE inapenya na kufanya kazi kimfumo ikiingia ndani ya mmea kwa matokeo yanayoonekana. Lita moja tu kwa ekari husafisha shamba lako msimu mzima wa mahindi na kuifanya mojawapo ya dawa za magugu ya mahindi bora na ya gharama nafuu zaidi barani Afrika. Inapatikana katika maduka makubwa ya Agrovet karibu nawe. Lita moja, ekari moja, msimu mzima.
Jishindie pickup na zawadi zinginezo na Decalb. Ndiyo maana Decalb kutoka Bayer East Africa hutoa mbegu bora za mahindi zenye mavuno mengi, zenye ustahimilivu mkubwa dhidi ya ukame na magonjwa, na matokeo ya kuaminika. Zina variety mbalimbali zilizoidhinishwa na kuaminika. Nunua mbegu zako za mahindi za Decalb kwa ruza stika, kisha utume namba ya siri kwa 1393, unaweza kuwa mshindi. Decalb, mafanikio shambani. Masharti na vigezo kutumika. Imeidhinishwa na BCLB.
Bank Kenya has returned to profitability after posting a net profit of 444.2 million shillings for the year ending December, reversing a loss of 1.2 billion shillings recorded the previous year. The improvement was largely supported by lower funding costs and stronger growth in customer deposits. And here now is Jasmine Romboy with the details.
In the year 2025, SBM Bank swung back to profitability with a profit after tax of 444.2 million shillings from a loss of 1.2 billion shillings a year earlier. The lender's turnaround was mainly driven by a reduction in the cost of financing its operations. During the year, SBM reduced its cost of funds by nearly 20% to 6.8 billion shillings, down from 8.5 billion shillings previously. This was largely supported by a 20% increase in customer deposits, allowing the bank to depend less on borrowing from other financial institutions. Consequently, interest paid to other banks dropped significantly to 1.89 billion shillings compared to 3.3 billion shillings a year earlier.
And this was achieved through disciplined execution across the bank, whether it's to do with the fundamental redrafting and regrowth of our tech systems, to a huge investment in our digital systems, to a performance-oriented culture. Everything worked for us to achieve these results in a very short period of time.
Despite a broader slowdown in lending income across the banking sector, SBM's interest income remained steady at 10.7 billion shillings. Growth in the bank's balance sheet also supported earnings. The lender's loan book expanded by 6% to 46.9 billion shillings, while its investments in government securities rose by 14.2% to 41 billion shillings.
This turnaround shows that the bank has moved on from a period of stabilization to a period of growth.
Despite the improved performance, the bank's capital buffer remains narrow. Its total capital to risk-weighted assets ratio stood at 15%, slightly above the regulatory minimum. The lender is also carrying accumulated losses of about 2.95 billion shillings, which have weighed on its core capital position. Management says the bank will rely on retained earnings and growth in non-interest income to gradually rebuild capital and wipe out the accumulated losses.
Not only is SBM's capital position very strong, we're very well above the CBK's requirements, but our liquidity position is even stronger. Our liquidity stands at 47.6%, against a minimum of 20%.
SBM Bank entered the Kenyan market in 2017 after acquiring Fidelity Commercial Bank for a symbolic $1 before later injecting 2.6 billion shillings in fresh capital. The lender later expanded its presence through the acquisition of select assets and liabilities of the then collapsed Chase Bank Kenya. Jasmine Wamboi, Citizen TV.
Insurance agents in the country are calling for the immediate intervention of President William Ruto, claiming thousands of motorists risk losing valid motor insurance covers after 3 insurers were placed under statutory management earlier this week. The agents warned that mass policy cancellations could expose drivers to legal risks despite having purchased their covers in good faith. Dennis Otieno reports.
A growing dispute is emerging in Kenya's insurance sector after the Insurance Regulatory Authority IRA placed Trident Insurance Company Limited, Cusco Mutual Assurance Limited and Corporate Insurance Company under statutory management on March 10th. The regulator appointed the Policyholders Compensation Fund to take over the management of the troubled insurance as part of efforts to safeguard policyholders. But the move has sparked concern among insurance agents and motorists across the country. Certified professional mediator and insurance agent Boniface Sila Munyao has now written to President William Ruto seeking urgent intervention.
Motorists view the decisions that were communicated by IRA to be unjust. They are unlawful and unconscionable, and then they are contrary to the mandate of Policyholders Protection Fund, and then they are also financially insensitive to motorists who have been affected, because who refunds the premiums they have paid?
Munyao argues that placing a company under statutory management does not automatically invalidate existing insurance contracts unless the firm is declared insolvent or placed under liquidation.
What we are seeing here is motorists are worried that they'll be under constant harassment by the police before they are able to purchase other cover. We are in tough economic times, and we see IRA and Policyholder Protection Fund were very inconsiderate to cancel covers and demand that motorists purchase motor insurance covers elsewhere.
Under Kenyan law, driving without a valid license is a criminal offense, raising fears that affected motorists could face penalties on the road. The appeal comes as Kenya's insurance sector continues to grapple with low public confidence, with insurance penetration still standing at below 3%. Meanwhile, IRA maintains that protecting policyholders remains top priority during the statutory management process. The regulator says policyholders and claimants will be formally guided on how to submit new claims or follow up on pending compensation. However, motorists holding active policies with affected insurers have been advised to seek alternative cover from other licensed companies, as existing policies issued by the firms are now considered invalid following the directive. Dennis Otieno, Citizen TV.
The future of Africa's financial services sector will be shaped largely by technology and digital infrastructure powering financial systems. These are the sentiments of financial sector industry leaders who, at the Africa Fintech Summit, said they believe technology will redefine banking, payments and credit delivery across markets, as Jimmy Mbogo now tells us.
Stakeholders attending the 2026 Africa Fintech Summit have called for new financial innovations to meet the needs of future customers. Speaking during the summit, Equity Bank Group CEO Dr. James Mwangi noted that innovations must be driven not only by customer-facing applications, but also by the underlying digital public infrastructure that supports them.
I see digital public infrastructure as the new roads, railways, and airports and ports that we had in the future as enablers of economic development. The modern economy will be built on digital public infrastructure.
It is this infrastructure needs that the financial sector players now say provides an opportunity to make development financing one of the largest bankable investment opportunity on the continent in the coming years, calling on regulators to provide strong regulatory framework to ensure interoperability, trust and customer protection guidelines to safeguard the investments.
I think the biggest opportunity there is financing development. And I see the private sector leading in financing development, because that's what really we need so that we create inclusive economies. So what I see is the opportunity of governments recognizing that there is a lot of money in the private sector and structure development projects to be bankable so that the private sector can fund them.
At the same time, Equity Group has announced plans to build an artificial intelligence studio in Kigali. Jimmy Mbogo, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Business News brought to you by Safaricom Business.
Keep business growing with calling, texting, and SMS. Stay connected with customers and suppliers with Zidisha Plus voice and data. Join Safaricom Business today and power your progress.
Battle for the 2026 Safari Rally title finally poised. Sports now, and the battle for the 2026 Safari Rally title is finally poised as the top three drivers are separated by only 12 seconds after stage 9 of 19. And as Mike Okinye reports from Naivasha in Nakuru County, Saturday is a big day with a punishing schedule that will see the drivers tackle Soisambu, Elementaita, and the dreaded Sleeping Warrior stages.
The drivers got some relief in the morning with the cancellation of the Camp Moran 2 stage following heavy rains overnight. The safety cars and crew could not pass through and the stage was called off. The stages of the day were reduced to Loldia 1, Kenjen Geothermal 1 and Kedong 1 for the morning session. Once again, it was a day for the Toyotas as they took advantage of the dry conditions to go flat out. The driver of the day was arguably veteran Sebastian Ogier, who cut the lead at the top from more than 1 minute to just 1 second. He seems to understand the Safari Rally well and knows what to do in different conditions.
Always very warm welcome, and it's the case again, so thank you everyone for the support, and I'll try to keep fighting to the end of the weekend and hopefully can secure another strong result here.
The rally leader remains Oliver Solberg of Toyota, who, despite not winning any stage of the day, remains 1 second ahead of Ogier. He was one of the many unlucky drivers to get punctures from the punishing terrain of the Kedong and Loldia stages.
Yeah, that was a shame. We lost a lot of time on that 30 seconds, so for sure our lead was cut by half, but otherwise, lead is in the lead and we are back to zero, so we just have to start flat out tomorrow again.
Another Toyota driver, Sami Payari, is making a name for himself, winning 3 stages of the day and pushing veteran Ogier all the way in the other stages. He sits 4th in the standings and believes he has a chance of finishing on the podium.
I still felt that in the most tricky and rough places I was trying to back off, and so even we didn't take the fastest time on all the stages, I was all the time really close. So that was really nice to see that, because yeah, it's not only that you are completely flat out everywhere, because that will end up really soon.
On day 2 of the Safari Rally, the drivers' prayers were answered. No rain in any of the stages, but what they say is that the real rally starts on Saturday. All 3 stages are projected to be wet and very muddy. The teams that have done recce on the 3 stages of Soisambu, Elementaita and Sleeping Warrior have warned over very rough terrain that will be made worse by the projected heavy rains in all the 3 stages.
Very hard, a lot of stones everywhere, a lot of waters. The first 1.5 kilometers you will be faster with a boat basically. So most important thing is to travel a free day without any punctures, and that is most important. You can gain a lot of time. So today was tough for the rocks in the tires, but tomorrow is hard for everything else, conditions and driving.
We'll see. I just hope it's going to work better tomorrow. So we did work a lot on it, and I'm sure it's going to be better than SS1.
The 3 stages will be repeated again in the afternoon. After the afternoon loop, the race will be much clearer and the front runners for the title will be known. Michael Kinyi for Citizen TV in Naivasha, Nakuru County.
Posta Rangers eased off their relegation worries with a clinical 2-0 win over defending champions Kenya Police FC in a Kenya Premier League match played at the Kasarani Annex pitch. Posta Rangers kicked off the match on a high and were rewarded with a goal in the 7th minute, scored by red-hot striker Jackson Masharia. Despite Police pressing hard for an equalizer, Posta held on for a 1-0 lead at the halftime break with 12 minutes to play in the second half. Dickens Mwema delivered the fatal blow as he scored the second goal for Posta Rangers for a 2-0 win. Police remain 5th in the standings, 13 points behind leaders Gor Mahia. Posta climbed to 12th, 9 points clear of the relegation zone.
Daniel kwa yupo kwenye nafasi yake. Daniel ipo juu kwa juu. Dickens Mwema back super sub. La pili msimu, cross yake Brown Marita.
Still on the Kenya Premier League, 4 more matches will be played on Saturday with another 4 scheduled for Sunday. Bandari FC will be home tomorrow against Mara Sugar as APS Bomet welcome Bidco United at the Gusii Stadium in Kisii. Troubled Sofapaka host Nairobi United at the Police Sacco Stadium, knowing nothing short of a win will spell doom for them. Sofapaka sit at the bottom of the Kenya Premier League with only 14 points after 23 matches. They are 7 points off the safety zone and face a Nairobi United side that is hungry for wins to improve on their 10th position on the log. Naibos have collected 30 points from 20 matches and are 20 points behind leaders Gor Mahia. Naibos have not lost in the last 6 league matches. They played in the CAF Confederations Cup and have 3 games in hand. The 4th match tomorrow will pit Mathare United against second-placed AFC Leopards at the Nyayo National Stadium. And National Sevens rugby coach Kevin Bling Wambua has named his 14-man squad for the South American leg of the Sevens 2 rugby series. The team will play in the Montevideo in Uruguay and Sao Paulo, Brazil. Legs of the series, Gabi Ayimba is back in the team after missing the first tournament held in Nairobi last month. David Nyangenge also makes the squad that sits 3rd in the standings. The rest of the squad has co-captain Samuel Asati and George Oro, John Okoth, Dennis Abukuse, Vincent Onyala, Kevin Wakesa, Patrick Odo Adongo Festus Shiasi, Nigel Amaita, Floyd Wabwire, Chrysant Ojwang, and travelling reserve Brian Tanga.
There's no easy games. That's the mentality we really have to go with in Montevideo. Play every game like a final. If you look, the only game we lost in the first tournament was against USA, and that's the first game. That's a very, very important game for us. It should dictate the tempo of the rest of the tournament, and the boys are just eager to get on the plane and get the first game against USA, and just so we can set a base on what we want to achieve for the 2 weekends.
Kenya has been the pride of Africa for quite some time. Playing in the series, we've always represented more than Kenya. So us going back to the series, it will mean a lot to the country itself. Rugby is a uniting factor in this country.
Finally, 6 matches were played on Friday in day 2 of the third leg of the Kenya Volleyball Federation Men's League at the Kasarani Indoor Arena. The shock of the day was in match number 6, where defending champions, the General Service Unit, were hammered 3-1 by Kenya Ports Authority. GSU won the first set 25-20, but lost the next 3 sets 25-20, 27-25, 25-17. Trailblazers thrashed Administration Police 3-0 in sets of 25-16, 25-18, 25-16. Eldoret Water continued to impress as they eased past the Kenya Airports Police Unit 3-0 in sets. After the day's matches, KPA lead the table on 28 points, followed by Prisons on 24 points, Chema on 21 points, KDF with 20 points, and Equity Bank with 18 points. Thanks so much for your time. That's the latest right here on Friday Night with me, Lillian Muli. It is always a pleasure. Our sign language interpreter tonight, Yula Nzale, also says good night. Up next is 10 over 10. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.